night's edition of Face to Face, coming to you direct from our Newsfirst studios in Colombo. For the Newsfirst team, as always, I am Jayawickreme. And on the new look Face to Face, which will be running for almost an hour, we have two guests in our studios this evening. Kesaralal Gunasekera, former Member of Parliament representing the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, and also Rehan Jayawickreme from the Samagi Janapala Vegaya, and also the former chairman of the Waligama Local Authority. Very good evening to you, gentlemen, and welcome back on the show.
Very good evening.
Good evening.
So to kick off tonight's conversation, I want to speak to Mr. Gunasekera, first of all, regarding the sad state of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, once grand party of Sri Lanka, now grand strong party, which is now in tatters, with two factions claiming ownership of that party at loggerheads, and there's a tug of war going on. What do you make of this?
Well, the question is, I still feel if everybody is interested in the SLFP, they need to come together and work out an arrangement as to how they are going to move forward. Without that, because two factions are not going to be the answer to take the party forward. But at the same time, I do not know as to whether they are keen to have discussions to join hands. But I still feel that's the only way, because if you have two factions moving in opposite directions, the party suffers. The SLFP party suffers. So it's far more better to get together, maybe a team, because all these people who have gone to the Porto party are fundamentally SLFP. And Porto is no more. Fundamentally, I don't think they can ever contest an election.
I see.
In that backdrop, I feel it's far more better for them to come back to the fold and maybe get together and iron out your differences and work out, because whatever you do is for the country, not for individuals, not for groups. It has to be for the country. Parties are there for the country, not for individuals or groups.
Right. So Rehan, Mr. Gunasekera brought out a very important fact. He said, a rather alarming fact, he said that the SLPP is no more, and that they don't have a mandate. But during the SLPP's May Day rally, there were rallying cries by those who were present there, and they said that you can't see the crowd here because we are the only party who organized a May Day rally at a park, and there are so many people who are waiting outside that can't get in, which is why we can't show our numbers. What is your opinion, being a representative of the main opposition?
I think we have all seen the amount of crowds that the SLPP even pulled in 2015. I don't think crowds per se reflects what election results could be, and that is clearly visible in the 2015 elections. SLPP was bringing mass crowds, and they still lost to the former President Maithripala Sirisena. So I really don't think crowds are anything to go by. And another example that we can use is that the JVP has always bought the biggest crowds traditionally in May Day, and they have failed to secure enough parliament seats throughout. I don't know whether that's going to be the case next time. But again, I don't think that crowds should reflect anything. And I also think that the reason that the SLPP had it there is because that place gets packed up with a small crowd. And we all know how bringing crowds work. And, they stuck to that.
So talking about May Day rallies, if that is anything to go by, based on your own individual opinions, who do you think garnered the most number of support? Do you believe it is the SAB, or did you see there were certain crowds for the NPP's rally? There were crowds at the
You're talking about the numbers that attended.
The numbers.
Numbers that attended. Numbers, I think NPP has had bigger numbers. But here the point, it all depends on whether, when it comes to politics in Sri Lanka, there are certain parties, you might not be able to get large number of party supporters coming to witness meetings, but they will vote. But when it comes to certain parties, they need to show a lot of strength at party meetings to get a smaller number of votes. That is always there.
Understand.
That's always there.
Understood. So if there is an election this year, most probably a presidential election, Rehan, we need grassroots level activity for any party, and the SJB, we know, like any other party, has been active in the grassroots, and you were the former chairman of the Valigama Local Authority, so you are also very much connected and you're also the organizer for that area at present in that electorate. What sort of structuring has been going on for the impending election? How have you been rallying your supporters, giving them the necessary confidence to vote for your presidential candidate?
First of all, I must clearly state that the next election is going to be between the SJB and the NPP. That's the ground level reality.
I see.
And I'm not saying that's because the NPP is on a better footing. I'm just saying because of the inadequacies of the SLPP and sometimes the failures of the SLFP and also the unpopularity of the incumbent. You know, it's going to be a fight. It's going to be a fight. But then again, I think Mr. Kesarlal, who is a much more experienced politician than me, who's been doing politics since 1977, I think he will also agree with the fact that Sri Lankan elections are very tough to call until the end stages. For example, we never thought that Maithripala Sirisena would be the candidate in 2015. So a lot can change between the time the elections are called and the 1 month. So all that remains to be seen. But right now the front runners are the SJB and the NPP. And we'll have to see how it goes closer to the election date. But we are confident of winning. Not only do I have to say that, but I also believe that we can win. Because I think that we have the best team to win the election. And I don't think the NPP has that team, but then again, that's my opinion. But I think we are on a solid footing at the moment.
So you represent the more youthful aspect of the Samaki Janapala Vega, someone who even I could relate to. Can you let our more youthful viewers or the younger viewers of Face to Face know, even personally to me, can you let me know what sort of a plan the SJB has to secure our futures, Rehan, should you come to power?
Jayamal, the SJB has already presented our economic manifesto, which is called the Blueprint. Our election manifesto is not ready as yet because that comes closer to the election.
Right.
But we will obviously be going by somewhat the same principles that we ran in 2019. We have a good team, and that is very, very important. We have top economists in our team. We have people who are used to governing a country. We have a majority of people who we can call clean. And we also have a leader that believes in the team. So I'm not a person that believes in one person, being the savior. I think it has to be a mix, and that mix has to be a form of good leadership and also a good team. Again, I don't see that in the NPP because I think the NPP is again a showcase of what the Pohottuwa did in 2019 by putting in front the Viyatmaga.
I see.
So it's because of the fact that the JVP has chosen the NPP to attract the urban class and
the intellectual
vote. So to the youngsters, all what I can say is that we have a economic blueprint that's available in our party website. It's available in so many forms. You could, if you request, we could even give one from the party office. So that blueprint clearly states where we are going to go as a country, and that's what people have to believe in. People have to believe in manifestos, even though politicians have broken manifesto promises over and over again. They must believe in our manifesto because I think our manifesto is the one that can put the country back on track. Again, I don't think it's an easy job. I don't think it's a 2-3 year job. I think whoever takes government, it will be about a 5-year journey where we get back on track.
I see. Mr. Gunasekera, Rehan pointed out that in his opinion, the NPP and the SJB are the front runners for vying for presidency. But Maithripala Sirisena has announced that Vijayadasa Rajapaksa will be the presidential candidate of the SLFP, at least from their faction. What do you make of all this?
Well, the question is very difficult for me to mention and state as to where we stand as of today because all these things will definitely take a different turn when the elections are announced. So we'll have to wait for that time. But what he said is that at the moment, the two major leading parties have to be SJB and NPP, which is correct. There is nothing wrong in that. But it all depends as to what type of things, what type of discussions, etc. What parties would do in between now and a calling of an election. We don't know whether other parties would come into an alliance with so many others. We don't know. But we cannot say
for sure
now. Yeah.
But
discussions will go on because there are so many other parties involved in this, which there's the side of the Tamil parties. the Muslim parties, they're also silent.
Yes.
They have not said anything. So we don't know. It all depends. But when the elections are announced, then I'm sure I'll be in a position to say, look here, who's going to win? It's not it's not a difficult exercise.
But you represent the SLFP. Would you rather have your candidate from the SLFP?
That is always the case. No,
yes.
I represent a party. I would prefer an SLFP candidate.
And you mentioned that there are certain coalitions and alliances that come about when it's election season.
That always happens.
Do you believe the crisis within the SLFP is being orchestrated by a certain party to align the SLFP, or rather majority of the SLFP, with another party?
That is being discussed at various quarters. We do not know exactly what
from
it is.
what you are
but I still feel that everybody needs to come together. Division is not going to be the answer. SLFP division is not going to be the answer. They need to get together. They are formidable if they get together. If they are not, they will die a natural death.
So suppose they do get together and eventually agree on Vijaydas Rajapaksa being their presidential
whoever
candidate.
it is,
Yes, let's assume it is Vijaydas Rajapaksa. Do you think he will have the public support, or he will be able to be a fierce competitor for the SJB and the NPP?
It all depends on who are the other parties who are going to support us. It all depends on that.
Right.
That's
as a character, as a personality.
As I say, it is several parties coming into an alliance, which can be a strong force. Because as it is, SJB and NPP have shown that they are a strong force. They have already established.
Yes, but at the same time, the candidate that you put forth is also a determining factor. Now, the opposition leader, Sajid Premadasa.
The support that candidate is going to have in terms of other parties. Are they also aligning themselves with our...
But at the same time, the presidential candidate of whichever party has his or her own voter base. So, do you believe Vijaydas Rajapaksa would be the right candidate?
No, not to that degree. It's a support of the parties and the alliance.
Do you agree it's a collection, or the presidential candidate also brings a certain amount of...
I think Mr. Kesalal is right. It all depends on the alliance. I'll give you a good example. The estate votes, that's a big factor.
Right.
And for that we have an alliance partner. The North and East votes, the TNA will play a deciding factor. So like he said, it's alliances that will do it.
So in this process of coalition building and creating alliances, how has the SJB been faring these days? Have you been reaching out to parties that you would ordinarily not align yourself with and asking them for their support?
Lots of people have lots of things to say about certain members of the SLPP that we took in. But I think when it comes to politics, it's very difficult to filter out everyone. There are certain members that we had to take in. Some of those appointments I may disagree with, but then again, the party made that decision, and as a party member, I will stick by those lines. But alliances are very important, but we have to be very careful of not tainting ourselves with too many people who have been associated with the SLPP. Because I think the next vote will be an anti-Rajapaksa vote. It will be an anti-SLPP vote. Much as the same in 2020, where it was anti-UMP, it was anti-Ranil Wickremesinghe vote, which is why they didn't get a single candidate. So we have to be very careful about the things, the people we get in. But I think that there are certain political parties, including the SLFP, where there are people like Mr. Kesal, Gunasekera, I think that we should tap as a party, where there is all very good, decent politicians who are not tainted with corruption. So more of him and less of the other people in the SLPP. But I think that there are certain people that we may have to take.
Because one common allegation that has been made against the SJB is that when there are defectors from the ruling party, the SLPP, the SJB has taken some of them in, and what the people are saying on the roads or the street is that it's the same person in a different light. It's the same wine in different bottles. So where do you change that from?
I have to just make something clear there. For example, there are two members of the SLFP that joined us and obtained membership of the SJB. That is Chandima Virakodi and Shan Vijayalal Silva.
Yes.
Both of them, they are not part of an alliance, they are part of the SJB. There are relevant organizers in the Galle district.
Yes.
The others who came in as a part of an alliance, and that was about 4 or 5. We are looking at the SLPP, which has a number of 150 odd plus, right? So I think that even though some of those appointments may be questionable, in the broader scheme of things, we have not accepted many people who have wanted to come to us. And I don't think it's right to mention their names because we have to have some sort of integrity.
Yes.
But there have been many of them who have tried to join us that we haven't taken.
They have approached you.
They have approached us, many of them. I can tell you more than 20, 30 SLPP members have approached us. I'm not even going to name one of them. It's not right. None of them are here.
Yes, certainly.
But we had to filter out, and there are certain people that we had to take because they came in with other coalition members as well. And that coalition wouldn't have joined us if there were one or two that we didn't take. So I'm not going to mention the names of the questionable people, but this had to be done. I don't think it will affect our vote base in any way. And I think it's up to the people to decide, even if they are running from our side, who they are going to choose to represent them or not. That again is the choice of the people.
Yes.
And if the people want to defeat them, so be it. If the people want to get them into parliament, so be it. But that again is part of the people's franchise.
Right. So Rehan, coming to the status quo, currently what's happening in Sri Lanka, something that made headlines over the past week or so was the visa issue at the airport in Katunayaka. This was it turned into a major issue after the video that was recorded by an onlooker at the airport went viral, and now it has come to a point where even the president's attention, the cabinet, the parliament's attention has been drawn to this. I want to ask you, from a standpoint as the former urban councillor of the chairman of the Weligama Urban Council, which is a tourist hotspot, how these sort of instances hurt Sri Lanka's tourism. What did you make of it from a standpoint of a chairman of a tourist hotspot being Weligama?
As far as I know, VFS is there in countries where you get countries, for example, VFS represents many countries in Sri Lanka. If a Sri Lankan wants to get a visa to go to the UK,
yes,
they have to apply to the VFS. That is because UK visa regulations, for example, are very tight. You have to show a certain amount in your bank. Now, what's puzzling to me is why they are handling a visa which is not hard to get. The Sri Lankan,
it's easy to get.
Yeah, sorry, which is easy to get.
Yes.
Thank you for correcting me, sir.
Yeah.
Because the Sri Lankan visa is probably one of the easiest visas in the world to get. So why is it that a foreign company was allowed to do that? Again, I have no idea why. Because it's something that the immigration officials have handled all this time. And it is not something that was brought into parliament. It was something passed by cabinet. Then you have to ask yourself, then what is the sovereignty of parliament? Then what is parliament there for? Because parliament is the one that handles public finance. Yes. The Committee of Public Finance, Committee of Public Enterprise. All of these things are within the purview of parliament. So I really don't want to go too deep into it because I don't know the specifics of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that, in the time to come, we will find out. But then I also heard something very interesting today. I heard that the issue is not with VFS, but there are two other companies involved here.
It's a tripartite agreement. Yeah.
Exactly. And I heard that one of the representatives of that is a very prominent SLPP governor's son. So I'm not going to mention the names, but I think that will come out soon. So this has to be dug into, and then we found it's a serious issue.
So Mr. Gunasekera, I want to direct that question at you as well, because you have seen flimsy decisions of this nature being made time and time again, regardless of the government. So I want to know your opinion as well.
The question is, I still feel if I go into this matter, I always believe that ministers, parliamentarians must have qualities which can pull them through any issue. Number one is ethics, very important. Common sense, integrity, and conscience. If these four aspects are there in a minister or a politician, he can always perform. Ethics, common sense, integrity, and conscience. Because with these four, you can do wonders. If you go into this aspect of this particular saga, you realize whoever decided on this does not have any of those. Does not have any of those. Because number one, we are struggling to get tourists into our country. Why do we have to charge an exorbitant amount of money from them? Who's going to collect it is a different issue, but why do you want to charge? We ask companies to come and invest in Sri Lanka, and we give them tax holidays. Why? Why do we give them tax holidays?
Yes.
Because those investments are required for this country, which is important for this country. That's why we do that. So when we ask tourists to come, we want them to come. Why do they? I mean, it is not a situation where 10-15 million come to Sri Lanka today. No, that's not the case. It's roughly about 2.5 million. So in order to attract them, why raise those visa fees? And most of the fees are not coming back to our coffers.
Exactly.
Being taken back.
Coming back to our coffers. That's the most important thing. So these are not decisions that should have been. And I always say, cabinet system of governance, Rehan, I've always said this, cabinet system of governance is perfect, provided the people who handle this subject have those 4 qualities. Today, we have proved cabinet system of governance in Sri Lanka is abject failure. Abject failure. Why? Because nobody goes into these things. Cabinet decisions is not a thing where you 10-15 people sit and decide. No. It has to go through many hands, many minds, many heads. And then only finally you decide, okay, this is good for this country. If you can't do those things, don't take those decisions. Because those affect for maybe 10-15 years. Those are wrong decisions. So I realized that from day one, this is an absolute disaster as far as Sri Lanka is concerned. As he said, VFS gets involved in so many processes, but it is a facilitator. Always, any country, visa is granted by the immigration department. Nobody else gets involved in that. Whoever comes to this country, whether it goes through any process, you can say online process, all those processes, but the stamping is done by the immigration department officials. Nobody else can do that. So, to do that, why do you want VFS, etc., to handle all these matters?
Third party coming in.
There is no necessity whatsoever. I feel that's a big mistake, and I was told that it was in Parliament as well last year. It was approved in Parliament. It is very shocking. But for me, the shocking this thing is as to how did it go through cabinet when you see a minister who's angry about this presentation, but he would have been there in the cabinet at that time.
And he would have given his consent as well.
He would have given his consent as well. Why? Because you have not gone through this decision at all. You must go through and then find out as to whether it is good for the country. Number one, I mean, it is good for the tourists who are coming. I mean, are they going to promote Sri Lanka? I mean, you were charging 25 or 30, became 50, and now becomes 100. It's good that the cabinet decided to go back to 50, but I still feel they have to go in through this whole process and take action as to how this happened all of a sudden. These are things that the government of Sri Lanka has to do.
So we've reached an interesting phase on Face to Face this evening, but we have to cross over for a short commercial break. Do stay tuned to Face. We'll be right back.
Newsfirst, Face to Face with Jayawickreme.
Because when we take a loan or when any loan is being taken, we automatically go into evaluation point.
The sex absence of any knowledge with regard to sexual education. Now, those two are key pillars.
Transparent ways of showing how money is spent, we are doomed.
Even when the LTT was in operation, when there was actually a civil terrorism issue going on in the country, we didn't have these laws. Then the question is, why do we need these laws?
So this has brought down the total GDP by about 25% in dollar terms, which was around 90 billion. Now it's around hovering around 70 billion.
There are particular focus areas that I think evolve based on the binational commission.
So like the self-esteem is really, really low. Like they don't believe anymore, okay, I can do something about that. So anymore there's no any decision making about that, and very passive.
With regards to state land. So I think this will carry huge repercussions for the future.
අසාධාරණ මාරය වගේ වුණාට සාධාරණ පිළිගත්තා වගේ.
වැඩි දේවල් ඉල්ලන්නේ නැහැ. අප්පෙට එකයි 18ට එකයි. කියා දෙන්න ආදරේ තරම් අද රාත්‍රියට ඉදිහට
සිරස ටෙලිතිරයෙන්
නීල කියන්නේ වෙලාවකට දෙගොඩ තලා යන ගඟක් වගේ.
ඉම්ලි මේ ගෙදරින් එළියට ගියත් මේ නගරයෙන් ගියත් එයා යන හැමතැනකම ආර්යන් සින්රාතවුර්ගේ විශ්වාසය තියෙන නිසා. එම්ලි
ඉම්ලි අද රාත්‍රී 9:30ට සිරස ටෙලිතිරයෙන්.
People shouldn't be afraid of their government. Instead, governments should be afraid of their people.
NPP has is by design, and it's not only in Sri Lanka, even across out of Sri Lanka as well.
I had to go to my cabinet minister secretary even to get a small thing passed.
That's a different question. The authorities are there. Why aren't you going in?
The integrity was compromised by the bribery commission.
The chairman of the party does not attend when you all sign a MOU with GLP and Nalagodeva, which is quite important.
Who was trying to safeguard the robbers of central bank.
We know
while
in Sri Lanka there are issues.
Inquiry was going on.
People wanted Gotabe, right? People elected him.
But what we can see is that it has certainly stalled. There is no public record of what these cases were.
In particular, the things are very severe when President is also the Minister of Finance.
I will give you a post how it came about. It was not argued in the parliament. It was not even put to the cabinet. It was forced down the throat of the people of this country without an election.
Newsfirst, face to face with Jayawickreme.
Welcome back to Face to Face. I am in conversation with Mr. Gunasekera and Mr. Jayawickreme. We've reached a very interesting point in our episode this evening. Mr. Gunasekera, before we crossed over for the break, you brought out 4 features that a successful politician must have, or a policymaker must have, and for official for that matter. And in the interest of our viewers, I'll mention those 4 features, which are ethics, integrity, common sense, and conscience. But in the modern day, the modern politician, if they do a self-reflection, I don't think they will find either of those features.
No.
And that brings me to my question, if you allow me, to ask Rehan. Back in the day, in the 60s, 70s and the 80s, or even the 90s for that matter, Sri Lanka had statesmen. We had the Athulat Mudalis, the Gamini Disanayakas, or more personally the Montagu Jayawickrames, people who had a stake in the country and were willing to take Sri Lanka out of where it was and onto a path of prosperity. But now, being in politics is merely a business. It is access to do anything you want with impunity and get away scot-free even if you are exposed.
And earn money.
And earn money at the same time. Where did Sri Lanka go wrong, Rehan? I want to know the opinions of 2 generations, firstly from Rehan and Mr. Gunasekera as well. Did the voters get it wrong, or did the politicians realize that this is a gold mine that they can extract from and they went astray? Where did we go wrong?
In my opinion, and I may be wrong, I think the landmark thing that went wrong was the preferential voting system.
Why do you say that?
I say that because prior to 1977, an MP would be responsible only for that particular electorate that they represent, much like the Westminster system.
Yes.
It was not possible to cross over then. But then subsequently, once this preferential voting system came in place, big money started going around. And as a person who's done politics, Mr. Gunasekera also knows that when you run an election, even if you're handed an electorate, you can't just contest from that electorate. You have to get votes from all over the place. And to get those votes, you have to lie. You have to lie in different electorates, saying that, you'll come there, you'll work for them. But soon after the election, party mechanisms come in play, and you're not allowed to go to those electorates without the permission of the relevant organizers.
Right.
So my opinion is that it's the preferential voting system, and also in a certain degree I would say the unlimited powers given to the executive, the checks and balances, where you're immune from the law. I think both these things played a part, but I'm sure if I'm wrong or if I'm right, I'm sure that Mr. Kesalalal can educate us even further with his points.
Yes, would you like to add to that, Mr. Gunasekera?
Yes, I still feel I'm agreeable to what he said about the preferential system of voting which came in after 89. I feel that was a big disaster. It was not a disaster at that time, but then over the period people started realizing, look here, if you can collect votes here and there, I can come into the picture. And how do I do that? I earn money, maybe through drugs, all those things, and then still come back. And that is exactly what has happened now over the years. But the question here is, number one, it is a fault of the people also.
Correct.
People always bring wrong politicians to power.
Right.
I can't say this openly. People, of course, I'm not interested.
No, you're free to say it, because
I'm not interested in contesting elections. Therefore, I can say it. The people, if they had correct decisions, none of these things would have happened. Number two, politicians. Number three, officials. All three are in the same boat. This is why we are in this rut in today's context. And the party never ever wanted quality people to be promoted. Never ever wanted quality people to be promoted. Why? Because it's easy now, say, I will not mention names. There have been certain presidents who prefer to have so and so and so as ministers. Why? Because it's easy to do jobs with them. He does his own job, but whatever I say,
they know to play the game.
They know to play the game. The question is, with us, it's so difficult. Even if the president asks me to do something wrong, I say, go to hell, I'm not going to do it. But there aren't many people like us. There aren't many people like us. Therefore, who suffers? The country suffers. It is a country that has suffered right along by not having good people in power, not having good people. You know, another mistake that many people make is this process of election is to select an MP to perform functions at a national level.
Right.
Many of us have made that fundamental blunder. We feel, I am for Ratmalan, I am for Gaul, I am for Devindra.
There's no unity there.
It is not, the question is, the selection is that process. But once you get selected or elected, you have nothing to do with him, because your area has to be handled by local authority and it is supported by the provincial council. You have no role. In all other countries it is the same. In all other countries it is the same. But in our country it is totally different. That is why, can you see the amount of money that is wasted? Today, Member of Parliament receives 100,000 rupees to have office in elected. What for? He has no role in his job is in Parliament. He has to come 4 days in Parliament, not 4 days, all 30 days in Parliament. His job is Parliament. When we were in Parliament, our role was in Parliament.
Not elected.
When we had Minister, Mr. Atulat Mudali, when he's not in Parliament, he's in his office, ministry. Today, how many ministers work on a daily basis in his ministry? There are certain ministers who don't come to the ministry not even once a month. There are certain ministers who only come once a week.
Right.
That's why this system has gone. When that system fails, then the country fails. No wonder we ended up with being bankrupt. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not surprised. Because that's how we win. That's the way we followed. That's what people have been asking for, and that's what the people gave.
Right.
The politicians came in. They realized, look here, why should we do all those things? You know, a classic, I will tell you a good story. Very recently I saw, I will not mention names. Parliamentary members cannot be given leave to go abroad. Why? Because of the election.
Yes.
Parliamentary members should not be permitted to go in that manner, because they have to work for the country. Only during election your leave is cancelled. What about that? What about the periods? What about the periods? He can't be going and having Jones in overseas or countries? What rubbish. They must work in this country. They must be always, you appoint committees, various things. When I went to the Australian Parliament, we were given a pep talk as to how they got people to work, members of Parliament. They are brought in every 6 months. And you're staying. You are provided everything. Your family, everybody is provided for. Why? Because you have to work in Parliament from 4:30 to 6:30. Thereafter, you are not going back to your state. You are in Parliament.
It is a job after all.
You have to be there. In Sri Lanka, tell me one person who does it, most of the time, chamber is empty. Why? Because parliamentarians have absolutely no interest in that. Their interest is something else. Ministers don't come. Ministers don't go to the ministry. You think the country can prosper? What rubbish. So we should have been bankrupt earlier. We should have been bankrupt earlier for what these people have been doing. Everybody must be held responsible. Do you think anybody is held responsible today? No. You do something wrong, you must be punished. Anybody is punished today? No. I have seen officials who have done wrong things. Have they been punished? No. I've seen ministers. Yeah, I mean, just imagine certain ministers in present day context who have been charged in court of law, but they still continue to be ministers and MPs in Parliament. Where is the law in this country? There is a law for the politicians, a different law for the average man. You can't go on.
Some have been sentenced to life in prison
for stealing. People get, even when they steal mangoes, they are remanded these days.
Exactly. So no wonder this country ended up being bankrupt. How do we get it out?
So Rehan, coming from system fail to system change, something that has been called for quite some time, especially after the Aragalaya, we see and we hear many intellectual conversations during dinner parties or people we know who are suited and suitable and are qualified to hold responsible positions, who have the integrity and the knowledge to hold positions of power and not misuse that, but to use it as a weapon a tool to improve Sri Lanka, steering clear of politics because it's taboo. They don't want to be aligned with a certain party because it's either tainted or they might be branded as a supporter of the SJB or an MPP. They will merely mention their ideas at dinner parties or social circles, but there won't be any more action beyond it. What does the SJB do, apart from the brain drain that we have already experienced? At least the intellectuals and the knowledgeable citizens in this country who are willing and are able to work in Sri Lanka, what is the SJB's plan to integrate them into the party, to get them into positions of power and get their support to take Sri Lanka back to where it's supposed to be?
Jamal, being intellectual is one thing, to have common sense is a completely different thing. I'm not going to go too much into these intellectual stories because Gotabaya Rajapaksa had a massive intellectual following. Massive conglomerate owners, people who were really on top in the business world who are supporting them. This is knowing the fact what happened to Lasantha. This is knowing the fact what happened to Pragit Tenkalekuda, what happened with Keith Noya, what happened with the MIG deal. No, people just didn't care, right? And which is why I'm going back to the point which Mr. Gunasekera made. Common sense. Out of the four things he said, one was common sense. Now have our people used common sense when they were voting? No, they did not. No. But whenever the voting goes wrong, then they do a revenge vote to a party that's more incapable than other, just to prove a point.
Correct.
But not following policy, not following any sort of anything. So again, I'm not going to dwell too deeply on the intellectual story because in 2019, I honestly got disgusted with Sri Lankan politics by the way our people voted. Knowing the fact who the man was, knowing the fact what the man was capable of, knowing the fact what the man has done in the past, they still voted for him. I'll give you a good example. When Mr. Sajith Premadasa challenged him for a debate, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, what did he do? They said no, they're not going to take part in the debate. I was part of those many dinner parties that you have taken part in where there were intellectuals saying, oh, we don't need a talker, we need a doer. We don't need people who just speak. I mean, where in the world do you get that? You need to have debates. You need to have discourse.
Yes.
You need to be able to furnish your ideas. You need to be able to counter other people's ideas. You need to tell the people what your ideas
and
are.
receive constructive
criticism. But Sri Lankans, or a majority of them, don't believe in that. They believe in knee-jerk reaction type of voting, where it is very personal to them. For example, I don't think people in Colombo would have got on the streets if those people didn't have power. If they didn't have power, they wouldn't have got on the streets.
Certainly.
Correct.
Yes.
So it's only when it started affecting their households that there was but that's not how we must be. We must always think about the less fortunate. We should always think that there are people who don't have a roof above their head. We should think about the people who don't have smartphones. We have to think for them. So if we are not thinking for them, and if we are only worried about our own political journeys, and if the people themselves support it, then again I completely agree with him 100% that it's also the voter's responsibility. The voter gets what the voter deserves. And the voter, whatever the voter votes is what the voter deserves. And have Sri Lankans been voting smartly?
It's up to them to decide.
No, and the state of the country, where he said the country should have gone bankrupt years ago, absolutely correct. We should have been bankrupt in 2007. 2010 was when we should have declared bankruptcy. But we kept on taking loans, and we kept
loan after loan
with absolutely zero idea of how to repay it. Why is Japan not even helping us now? Because of cancelling the LRT project.
Strain ties.
That was a point something percentage that we had to pay them back.
Yes.
But this is all the fault of the entire system that we have been accustomed to.
You spoke about knee-jerk reactions and revenge voting. Coming to maybe the education system of Sri Lanka, to educate young minds of the importance of policy making, importance of politics as a whole, I believe has a role to play when they grow up and not just blindly follow who their mother or father voted for. And that's where the conversation of political apathy comes, because I personally know friends in my circle who are somewhat oblivious to what is happening in the country, and no disrespect to them, but we need to be invested in what is happening in this country, and I'm pretty sure even Rehan, but I know for an instance Mr. Gunasekera's generation was somewhat more invested, but here in our generation, Rehan, I feel like even the voters or the first time voters are somewhat disconnected from what is happening. So as a young politician who is involved in policy making, who is involved in making this country a better place, what is your message to those voters? How can they be invested? How can they change this system from what their mother or father did to appoint and elect the proper people for Sri Lanka's betterment?
If you can post that question to Mr. Gunasekera just for a second, because there's a very interesting quote that I want to find on my phone.
Yes, sure.
Which I want to read out.
Yes, sure. So Mr. Gunasekera, where do you think that disconnect happened? Back in the day, yes, there was a certain, let's say, alignment. But now, they just simply say all politicians are the same. Let the country go how it's running, however it's running. If we have fuel, if we have electricity, we are okay. How do you change that mindset?
The question in this country is, many people are totally disconnected as far as politics is concerned. Only during an election they come and vote, basically, fundamentally, to get something for themselves. Nobody votes for the country. Nobody votes for the country as far as I'm concerned. You are voting for something for yourself or your family. And this situation is extremely bad, because I want people to be involved in politics, to be knowledgeable in what is happening in this country. Today, most of the youngsters are not interested in any of those things. Not interested. That person who made that hue and cry in Parliament, that is the latest form of whistleblower, which politicians need to understand. That's the latest form of whistleblowing, which is prevalent in all other countries, but not in our country. That is called whistleblowing. Even the minister has to understand that is whistleblowing. And therefore, that is a positive one. But the question here is, when the civil society is not engaged properly, you have a problem. Why politicians can do anything they want?
Yes.
Why? Nobody is interested. If decisions of parliament, decisions of ministries are questioned by people, things will change. But the question here is, the younger generation, are they interested in politics? No. Why? Because why? They have seen all wrong things. They have heard all wrong things. And therefore they prefer no, please,
Stay
we
away.
don't get in. I don't want you to go and vote, which is very bad. Huh?
Yes.
We want people to go and vote. Whether you vote for X, Y, or Z, you please go and vote, cast your vote. Your franchise is much more important.
Definitely.
So the question here is, I feel even in the education system, politics must play a role. You know, children must be told as to what politics is all about. Doing things for the country, doing things for people, doing things for humanity. Those are things that have to come into the picture. And since we have not had that in the past, we are in this state.
I think Rehan is ready with this quote.
This is a very famous quote. I think Mr. Gunasekera will also agree with this. It's actually by Bertolt Brecht, someone that ironically Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe quoted while talking about the parliament, the bridge and all that. So what he said was the worst illiterate is the political illiterate. He doesn't hear, doesn't speak, nor participate in the political events. He doesn't know the cost of life, the price of the bean, of the fish, of the flour, of the rent, of the shoes and of the medicine. All depends on political decisions. The political illiterate is so stupid that he is proud and swells his chest saying that he hates politics. The imbecile doesn't know that from his political ignorance is born the prostitute, the abandoned child, and the worst thieves of all, the bad politician, corrupted and flunky of the national and multinational companies. So when people say, you know, I'm not going to vote, I'm, you know, against politics, you know, they don't know that everything from their toothpaste, from the time they get up to in the morning to the soap that they use when they have a shower in the night is all based on political decisions.
Correct.
So you cannot discount politics, because politics, just like anything else, is a part and parcel of the way we live.
Yeah.
And determines the quality of our lives.
Exactly. We must be engaged. And I want youngsters to come and shout. You know, that I don't know whether there was a decision by cabinet or whatever it is to obtain a statement from him, which is all wrong.
Yes.
And they did.
They did.
Yeah.
They did, but little did they realize that they missed Mr. Gunasekera. Little did they realize they missed the wrong guy. He's from a family of lawyers.
He's a family of lawyers, I was told.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy, that is whistleblowing. Huh? In the present day context that I call whistleblowing. There's one more thing I want to mention. You know, see, we have been stomaching so many things now. One is, you know, I always believe that when you are in power, when you are in control, you should not ever serve yourself. One instance, central banker, serving themselves with salary
hikes,
allowances. It is all wrong. Why? Because those four qualities were not prevalent with them. Huh?
Not even one.
If those qualities were prevalent,
they wouldn't have even thought.
They wouldn't have even thought about that. Because today the country is going through hell. People are going through hell. People have lost jobs.
Hungry.
Yeah. People can't have 3 meals a day. And for them, you know, I always say, parliamentarians cannot dole out for themselves. I am totally against payments made to parliamentary members on the decisions made by cabinet, because they are part of it. You cannot serve yourself. It has to be somebody else, some other committee sitting and deciding. I'll give you a classic example. Today, a member of parliament gets 50,000 rupees per month for communication expenses. Communication expenses is not even 15,000 rupees a month. Huh? You cannot pay an allowance, you know why? The law says very clearly, if a payment can be measured, the bill is there. You cannot give an allowance. You have to tell them, provide the bills, we make payment. Provide the bills, we make payment. So the parliament, who sits at the top, deciding on decisions on various issues, dole out for themselves. Dole out for themselves, which is totally wrong.
Right. So I can go on and on because there's so much to discuss. Unfortunately, that is
time
all
is a
the time
factor.
we have. Yes, this evening for Face to Face. My guests this evening were Kesaralal Gunasekera and Rehan Jayawickreme. Mr. Kesaralal representing the SLFP and Mr. Jayawickreme representing the SJB. A lot for the viewers to ponder on, a lot of food for thought on what you should be doing come election season, how to use your vote wisely. Do go and vote, exercise your franchise, make sure to know that what you do at the elections will determine your life for the next 5 years and also in the foreseeable future. And with that note, I want to wrap up Face to Face. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me today and sharing your very valuable insights with me and also our viewers this evening.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure, Rehan.
And that's the way it was on Face to Face. Take care and have yourselves a great night.